Okay, I don't think anybody else is coming on tonight, so I know it's not your specific unit, but I want to show you the similarities between this and Unit 3, and it will give you a bigger insight into how the assessment process carries on, because it's a different way of working, although, how can I say, different but the same. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to look at a couple of things I've put up here. One is you'll recognise this one, of course, and it's the front sheet for Unit 2. Yeah. Assess occupational competence in the work environment. Yeah. So on this, it says plan assessment of occupational competence based on the following methods: observation of performance in the work environment, examination of products, questioning of the learner, discussions with the learner, and use of others or witness testimony, looking at learner statements, and recognising any prior learning. Yeah. So there's a PowerPoint in there for them to look at, and you can expand from the information in the PowerPoint on there. So it says communicate the purpose, requirement and processes of assessing occupational competence to the learner. So that's the meeting you have with the learner when you decide which bits you're going to assess and when, and set up the actual assessment process.
Right, okay.
Once you've done that, you then plan the assessment of the occupational competence to address the learner needs and the current achievements already. Because quite often, by the nature of workplace assessment, it is holistic. You can't say, I'm going to watch such and such a thing on such and such a day, because when you get there, the material's not turned up, there's something missing, somebody's not here, a whole range of things can go wrong. So what you've got to look at is a job of work, and then you look at which units or parts of units drop out of that job of work. Yeah. So that's the way you have the purpose and requirements of the processes and assessing with the learner. Yeah. And then your plan is what you intend to do. Yeah.
Yes.
The next one, of course, precludes what I've said: identify opportunities for holistic assessment. Also, quite often something else will crop up while you're there that will cover part of another unit which you haven't actually planned for, but you can put that as an amendment to your plan after the event, basically. So it says use valid, fair, reliable assessment methods. I mean, that's exactly the same as Unit 3, and it's basically observation of performance, examining products of work. In other words, you've actually made something you can look at and measure, asking questions of the learner about the work they've done, discussions with the learner. You can have a professional discussion and this is why skilled jobs, certainly, and some other less skilled jobs as well, the awarding body quite often insists that the assessor must be occupationally competent. Not just have a qualification, etc., etc. They must be occupationally competent, because I could watch a young engineer go through, do a job, this, that, and the other, and everything went smooth and went to plan. But I can say, well, what would you have done if such and such a thing had happened?
You'd have to have that knowledge if
maybe what would you have done then? So there are a whole host of things that you can use. Witness testimonies are okay, but only if the witness understands what the standards are. It may be a supervisor who have seen him do the job and it's been okay, and they say, oh yeah, he's done that, but has it met those standards? Oh, I don't know. Well, you're no use to the witness, sorry. The witness, and usually when I've been in a company, somebody has been made responsible, and I've gone through the standards and what they've got to do, and being a tradesperson themselves, they know what to look for and so forth. So again, but you've got to check. And looking at learner statements they've made with regard job reports, things like that they've written out. And again, recognising prior learning. Part of the assessment process in the workplace may not cover all, everything that was planned to be assessed, but once you've completed the assessment, and you can sign off sections of it and say, yeah, well, that was okay, but we didn't do that for some reason. I don't know. Anything could have happened. Like I said, part might have been missing or whatever. So you couldn't do that. So we identify what's been completed and what needs to be done next. So it's always a moving goalpost, if you like, yeah, as you work through the qualification. Again, make assessment decisions of occupational competence against specific criteria. So again, you're making, just as you do with academic work, you are making an assessment decision against specific criteria.
Yeah.
The only difference I can say is that in academic work, the specific criteria, apart from command verbs, is looser. So as an assessor, you've got a certain amount of subjectivity in there that doesn't happen in practical work. It's very black and white in practical work. It's either achieved or it isn't.
It's been achieved or not, yeah.
And there are a number of reasons for that. A, quality of what's being made or manufactured, and secondly, and more importantly, health and safety. It may be, and quite often with any sort of work in the workplace, there is a risk assessment which must be adhered to at all times, and that is an important part of the process. Follow standardisation procedures, which is much the same as Unit 3.
Go inside. If you come here again, I'm going to be very cross. Goodbye. I'm going to shout at you in a minute. Go. Sorry, he's having one of those clingy days today. He was a little bit sick after school today, so...
All right. How old is it?
He's 4.5.
All right, okay.
Yeah, the baby.
Yeah, so standardisation procedures is just the same, where you get together and standardise some work between 2 or 3 assessors, and the methods are used as well.
Stop crawling about, please. Sorry. They're just having a day to get whatever you need and then just go. Keep it in the kitchen. Take whatever you need. No, goodbye. Go, please. The third interruption now. Go. Thank you. Go. Go. Stop being cheeky now. Goodbye. Right, I don't have space for the fridge in the kitchen, so...
Very cranky.
Oh, sorry. No more now, hopefully.
Yeah. And then, of course, the next one is provide feedback to learners that affirms achievement or remarks on achievement and identifies any further implications for learning, assessment and progression. So it can be anything from it wasn't completed correctly to, yes, that's fine, what we're going to look at next. If we look at this unit here or that part of that unit there, which jobs can we use to cover that one? And you go back actually after the feedback to plan the assessment with so it's cycle again. Yeah.
Just like that learning cycle that we looked at for...
They're all very similar. Plan, do, review.
Yeah.
The business cycle, just the same. Maintain mechanisms of assessment of occupational competence and its outcomes and the learner progress. So again, you're recording on your assessment sheet what's been achieved and what hasn't, or what has been achieved and what's to be achieved standing out yet, or whether it's all complete. Again, make assessment information available to authorised colleagues. Can you see the language is more black and white?
Yeah. It doesn't take to colleagues, it's like people who actually understand.
So it's make information available to authorised colleagues, and really you've only got 1 or possibly 2 authorised colleagues. One is your IQA and the other one is the tutor if you've not done the teaching and just doing the assessment. Yeah? Yes.
Make a note of that.
Again, follow procedures to maintain the confidentiality of assessment information. The assessment information, if it's in electronic form, then normally we get, as your information comes into us, it will come into me,
Yeah.
I will then keep that on my machine. Yeah. Only I have got access to that until I've signed it off, and then I transmit that to registry.
Right.
And once it's in registry, then it's kept there, and there's only the registrar and the principal, who actually accurates my work as well anyway, and they're only them able to see it. Hard copy portfolios, we have lock cabinets in the centre, so that if they come in for assessment, there is actually somewhere to put them that's locked up, but secondly, there is a strategy for how long they're allowed to be in centre before they return to the candidate. And that usually, well, if that's not up kept, there's words. So you maintain procedures to maintain confidentiality and follow relevant policies, procedures and legislation for the assessment of occupational competence, including those for health, safety and welfare, which I mentioned earlier. One of the other people that could be involved in make assessment information available to authorised colleagues, it may be you have somebody who is not a colleague that will need to see that information. Can you think who that could be?
It could be the awarding body?
Well, yeah, but that's only eventually when the EQA comes in. Somebody at this part of the process. Well, where are you actually assessing?
Yeah, no, the pupil, the learner.
Yeah, the learner, yes. Yeah. But where are you assessing him?
Oh, you're assessing in your organisation, aren't you, where you're working?
No, you're assessing him in his organisation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So maybe their employees?
The employer may need to see that. Yeah, yeah.
That took a while to get to.
Well, again, it's not your area, but again, it's the way you think about assessment in itself. And yes, it's a straightforward task, like I've said, but no, it isn't, because there are an awful lot of things to be aware of and to make sure you've got covered. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
The whole system, if I'm perfectly honest, the linchpin is the assessor. Yeah. The teacher delivers the material. Yeah, I hope they've understood it and walks away. The assessor looks at what's happened, looks at what's understanding and knowledge has been gained by that teaching or learning, and then reports on it and makes a decision as to what's been covered and achieved. So
just like in when we do in primary schools, that it's just sort of like a form of summative and formative test, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I normally, when I'm assessing, will get you to do LO1.
Yes.
Yeah. Send it to me, let me have a look at it, do a formative on it, and give me that back. And that way, then you've got the guidelines for what you need to do for the rest of that unit.
Exactly.
And again, because of the way we work, if you're stuck, you can always send me a text. But that's not always possible. Yeah.
That's true. I love this type of learning that we do, because it's even if this assessment style is that even if you do something wrong, you still get the opportunity to fix it without an examination route. Is a whole other.
Yeah, I mean, quite often examinations, as far as I'm concerned, the way I've always looked at them, are an assessment of memory on a particular day.
Yeah.
They're not an assessment of complete understanding. And never have been. And this is why, so many people have been let down by education, because of the way it's been actually assessed. Because
it depends on your own attitude on the day of the exam as well. If you get nervous or if anything that
can colour the actual outcome from there. Yeah.
That's true.
So next one, 4.1 is follow relevant policies and procedures and legislation for the assessment of occupational competence, including those. Oh, I've mentioned this one, health, safety and welfare. So when you have to be, or when you have to be in a workplace, let's say I am, in the past I've assessed steel erectors right at the top of a building when half of it's not finished. and you've got to go up to the top to do the assessment. Yeah, I have got to have the health and safety equipment on, the high-vis jacket, hard hat, boots, all the other bits and pieces that go with it.
That could be put down, say if I'm going into Unit 3 where it says special requirements for an assessment. I could mention things like that, couldn't I? Some of
those things that you need to actually do the assessment, yeah. So it's apply requirements for equality and diversity and, where appropriate, bilingualism when assessing occupational competence, yeah. One of the things that building sites have had a problem with is when they've had a lot of foreign workers on site, is to make sure that information is understood. Yeah. And sometimes they've had to have interpreters in to make sure that they fully understand, and then they've got to sign a sheet to say they've understood it. Yeah. Yeah. And 4.3 is evaluate your own work in carrying out assessments of occupational competence and maintain the currency of your own expertise, which is again the last two assessment criteria on Unit 3, which are exactly the same. So again, the information at the end is the same as well. All learning outcomes must be assessed using methods appropriate to an assessment of knowledge and understanding, which includes observation of performance, examination of work products, and questioning. Direct evidence of this kind may be supplemented where necessary with a professional discussion, reflective account, or witness testimony. On their own, I wouldn't support any of those three. They would need to have other evidence to back them.
To go with that, yes.
Evidence must come from the assessor candidate's performance in the work environment, and you are the assessor candidate. Yeah. So the evidence must come from the assessor candidate's performance in the work environment. There must be evidence that the candidate monitoring a minimum of 2 candidates for a qualification being taught or delivered.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is it, basically. That is the whole Unit 2. It's only 4 learning objectives, and there are only, well, there are actually 3 or 4 assessment criteria to each one.
Yeah, they're not too bad, yeah. I love this type of work where you just sort of like read something and then you respond to it in written form when it comes to evidence. You have to talk a lot with those.
The thing is with this is that when you're doing something and you're recording it, you're producing evidence. But it's naturally produced evidence in the work that you're doing. But it's not something that you've got to, how can I explain? It's not something you've got to remember because you're doing it. And doing something is you remember 70% of it, yeah? Or even 80. It's when you listen to something, it's about 20%. There are various things. You've seen them on there anyway. Yeah. I think it was a question on DET, that as well. You actually remember much more of something you've actually done.
When you physically end up doing the tasks, yes, that's true.
With assessment, within any organisation, you will see the same documentation, maybe in different format, but it will be the same documentation that you've got to fill in. So the assessment
isn't as easy as I thought. Not the qualification itself. When I thought you're assessing work, you're just looking at pupils' homework, you're marking it, you're giving them feedback, saying well done. But it's a completely whole kettle of fish. This isn't it really? With formal assessments.
It's like I said to you at the beginning. Assessment is straightforward, but it's not straightforward. As you get into it, there's more to think about to make sure. Because if you think about it in other ways, you are making decisions on somebody else's how they progress, yeah? Their journey through their learning, and you're making decisions on that. So that's why it's important that those decisions are informed and they're correct. And this is what IQA is about, because you will take, I've got some work from learners who've been assessed at IQA that I'm going to look at tomorrow with another organisation. We have had some learners transferred from that organisation, and before we would put them through for certification, obviously I need to look at certainly the IQA reports, and then have a look at some of the work and do a sample, just to make sure that everything's as it should be, because historically it quite often isn't. So
you're taking the responsibility of doing that as well. You need to make sure that it is at the standard that it needs to be.
You're responsible in a number of ways, not just to the learner, but also to the organisation that you work for and the awarding body.
Exactly.
Because any dissolution of the award is if it's not maintained, that reflects on them as well.
That's because I've had a situation today where I was supporting. I normally do support a learner with additional needs, so I'm with him for quite a while during the day. But because he's in year 1 now, we were having phonics lessons where I'm trained in phonics and I know that. But I pride myself in knowing that I keep up to date with the way things are meant to be. And the person that was doing it today wasn't saying the sounds properly, wasn't teaching it, going a bit too fast paced and doing too many things too fast. And probably bombarding them, and I was mentally going, "No, you got," and you got. So we had a chat at the end. I'm like, I've got some resources at work that I can help you with.
Yeah. What you need to do is you need to get an observation sheet.
Yes.
And when you're in a position like that, mark the observation sheet. That way you don't miss anything.
Exactly. Yes.
You can quite often have a chat afterwards and not say half of what you wanted to say.
That's true, because I probably did only say a couple of things. Time constraints and things as well. But
there are a number of forms you can do that with. I have one for the sessions. Yeah. I will look at other tutors' lessons. Yeah, and it's only a short form I have just to make sure. That everything's gone okay and so forth. But it's sort of just reviewing what we're doing. So I will actually get rid of that. Oops, where have we gone? Again, on this one, it will say what the unit is and example evidence. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, because I've got something similar to this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As long as you've got something on the DET, there was no material being provided for that by any of the normal providers. So I made these sheets out myself, if you remember. I put suggested evidence basically, and it looks at that.
And the amplification sheets for the first few units that you had were a lifesaver, because it got me used to doing the work and it led me in the right direction. And after that, I didn't even need them for that.
It's just to give you that impetus to say, if you do that, you'll not go wrong. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because with anything that you start that's new, you go, I'm not doing this right, or
you don't know which theories to look at, what models you should be doing. So
So there's another sheet on there to actually cover you on there and give you ideas on there. Yeah. Safe storage of records, manual and electronic, which I just covered anyway. Your own record keeping, legal requirements, Data Protection Act, Freedom of Information Act, etc., etc. Health and Safety at Work Act, Equality Act, Safeguarding Vulnerable Groups, Data Protection, Freedom of Information. So there's a whole host of things on there that will just tell you which direction you should be going in. Procedure and language requirements, Welsh, Irish, Scottish. Nowadays we have quite a diversity in the number of people that are now speaking Welsh and Irish and Scottish Gaelic. Oh yes, on this one we will meet sector skills councils.
I've mentioned the SSC, I think, in the DET.
SSCs are now directing what must be done in their sector. And some of them, as I've said, in both civil and mechanical and electrical engineering, one of the stipulations is that assessors must be skill qualified. I know it's common sense, but it makes a big difference. And those skills do get checked as well, because when I applied for my assessor's license, because of the training that I had from 15 years old, I covered a huge area. Not just mechanical engineering fitting, but I could also cover machining processes because I've done that. I could cover what I call basic principles, sort of forging in a steel, forging steel under power hammers, stuff like that, because I've done that. Motor vehicle engineering, where I stripped engines to bits and put them back together again. Even bodywork and paint, which I'd covered. And the other one that was allowed to assess on was motorcycle engineering, because it's been a hobby all my life. So because of that, I was then allowed to assess in those areas. So other ones that are now separate, which used to be part of other qualifications, is all the welding processes. Sometime in my life, I was a Asminine welder that did pipe work and things like that. So all those grown skills over a period of time allowed me to assess on a wide range of areas. Yeah, and of course the awarding bodies are what they weren't called sector skills councils then. But anyway, they wouldn't believe me at first until they went in. They checked into my work history and were sort of amazed.
Because the sector skills council, they do apprenticeships and things, don't they? Is that what they manage?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, apprenticeships are now available in all sorts of areas, but traditionally it was only in things like engineering, mining, civil engineering, all the different trades, and it was an old. I was probably one of the last of the old-fashioned apprenticeship types, where we covered a wider range of skills. I think my apprentice term was I was actually employed as an apprentice blacksmith millwright.
I've never heard of a millwright.
A millwright is the person that fixed anything that broke down in the mill.
Right.
Be it the boiler, the engine, anything that broke, you fixed it. And it was an absolute fantastic apprenticeship. I remember it well.
It sounds great, especially if you like using your hands to do things.
Yeah.
And, I think it's great that.
Yeah, but if you've ever seen hand forging under a power hammer, yeah, it'd frighten you to death. You pull a piece of steel out of a furnace and it's sort of white hot. Grab it in a pair of tongs, and then your huge power hammer starts knocking 7 bells out of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so that was one of the main things. So the last bit, as I said, is exactly the same. Evaluate your own work and maintain the currency of your expertise. So I'll actually show that one as well now.
I found out when I was studying to do my TA a few years ago that studying and physical work experience or / apprenticeships are imperative because you can learn about a policy, but they don't actually teach you how to do the job.
How to implement it. Yeah. It's the implementation.
Knowledge.
It's one of the things that we find in education difficult when we're finding new tutors. They've got loads of qualifications, but they don't seem able to put them into practice.
Exactly.
It's difficult. I mean, one of the things that you do when you do your Cert Ed is you do learn to lesson plan. Seriously lesson plan and build a scheme of work on a subject. And the number of people with that qualification who I've taken on and then asked them to do one, and will you show me how to do it?
I would, yeah.
And you're going, hang on. So it can be challenging sometimes. So on your Unit 3 that you've just done, on the have you done any work on that yet?
I've not started anything on it yet. My
I'll
aim is
open that up. I'll open that up now. I need to desktop. So, hello. because before we close, I'll run through that with you now. But I've recorded 2 so that I can put that recording out for the others that's not joined tonight. So, on LO1, it's very similar in select methods to assess vocational skills, knowledge and understanding, which addresses learners' needs to meet assessment requirements, including skills tests, oral and written questions, assignments or case studies, a project, or recognition of prior learning. Yeah.
For oral and written questions, we could do it sort of like, that could be sort of like a case study example, couldn't it? As if the learner's been given a case study and they've responded to it. Would that?
Yeah. You can ask questions about it to see whether they've fully understood what it was about and so forth. Yeah. If you design your questions, you could. Well, they are all questions, yeah, but you've got to write them down. You've got to have a copy of them so that you can put that in evidence. Yeah. Or audio record it. Yeah. One of the, I think I mentioned this before, but I do the IQA for another company, and the qualification they do is a level 6 in site management, which is obviously a high level qualification, and it's people who have been in the job for quite a few years. Now, it's difficult for an assessor to come and ask them to jump through hoops to collect evidence, and it's much easier to sit down, mark up which parts of the unit you can assess by discussion, yeah, and then sit down and just formulate questions, yeah, but those questions will drive a discussion rather than just a one-word answer or something of that nature. And that is then recorded on disc. And when I do the IQA, I can just put the disc in, and some of them is actually videoed as well, so I can watch it. And the one where he's giving feedback, that was a TV video of that, yeah. So I was able to watch that. So yeah, there are a number of ways that you can actually do your assessments at this level, at that level sort of thing. Again, prepare resources, conditions for the assessment of vocational skills and knowledge, but it doesn't say anything about a plan.
Right.
That's what it means. Information should be in your plan: where, who, when, what resources will be needed. Yeah.
So you could start with for 1.2. I could just make a plan and have all of that included.
Yeah. Again, select methods to assess. Select 2 learners. Again, it may be useful if one has a learning issue. Not necessary. Yeah. Collect copies of all the assessment methods used and records you will have produced with them into your plan, and then this information should be in your plan: who, when, where, what, and the resources that were used. And make sure all involved have a copy of your agreed plan and understand it. So communicate the purpose of requirements and the process of assessment of vocational skills. Yeah. So all involved are aware of what's happening and when. Yeah.
It's just like a learning bit where it says what the tutor will be doing and what the learner will be doing and what your expectations are of each other.
Well, have you got any assessment plans there?
No, I haven't got them with me, but I'm hoping to get hold of them.
Well, if you've not got any, there's some on Moodle. There's some templates on Moodle. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, you've communicated that. Now it says manage the assessment of vocational skills to meet assessment requirements. So that's your assessment. Yeah. An explanation of how the assessment went and any changes that were made. Yeah. Again, analyse the evidence of the learner achievement, show recorded assessment decisions, yeah, against specific criteria. Provide feedback to the learner that affirms achievement and identifies further implications for learning and progression. Now that is exactly the same as one of the ones in Unit 2 as well. Yeah.
This is making a lot more sense now. So what I would, once I've looked at the work that I need to be assessing, so it all just flows on from that work as I'm assessing it.
This very much this is very much in order progression qualification. Yeah.
Yes.
So again, an explanation of how the assessment went and why. Show recorded assessment decisions. That's on your assessor's report. Yeah. And show where you've provided feedback on the progress of achievement. So a feedback sheet if you've got one.
Yes.
Explain how you record assessment data. Explain what your process is for IQA sampling. So, maintain records of assessments and outcomes for learner progress. Make assessment information available to authorised colleagues. Again, exactly the same as in the other unit. Yeah. Follow procedures to maintain confidentiality of assessment. So explain how your school holds data within the meaning of the Act. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, LO4 is exactly the same. Evaluate your own work in carrying out assessment and produce any CPD records to ensure that current expertise and competence is maintained in assessing vocational skills. Almost the same, not quite, but almost the same as before. Yeah. And the assessment guidance is on the bottom here. I've stuck that in. And it's assessment of learners, skill tests, assignments, projects, reports, case studies, recognition of prior learning. Evidence must come from assessor candidate performance in the work environment. Yeah. And your work environment is a classroom. So, yeah. There's very little difference between Unit 2 and Unit 3. It's just where you're actually doing the assessments. There are slightly different conditions under which you want to be working. Yeah. So actions needed. So use your existing records to provide all the evidence for this practical unit. Yeah. Use narrative to link or any explanation that's needed. Yeah. And for all four, you'll need a reflection on your practice and evidence of any other qualifications you are doing. So,
let's just talk about what I've done so far.
NCFE level 5, I'll put it down there. Again, any questions, contact your tutor. So that's pretty well covered what I wanted to do tonight. Again, once you make a start on that, you'll find it flows through there. And again, if you hit any hiccups, if you hit any hiccups that you need any advice on, just send me a text as usual or a mail, and I'll follow that up from there.
Thank you.
So, with that, unless you've got any specific questions for me, we'll call that.
There's just a question about the DET, but I'll wait for that. But that's about it.
Oh yeah. Right. I've spoken to Raman this afternoon. I had to leave at before 4 o'clock, so we didn't actually finish our discussion. I found an old copy on one of my pen drives, but I don't want to send it to you until I've let him have a look at it to see if anything's changed. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. That's what I mean about making sure things are right. Don't just oh yeah, I've got that done. You've always got to check just to make sure. Yeah.
True.
Okay.
Okay.
That's been a view to you tonight, and thank you for attendance.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you next week.
I shall see you next week. No problem. Bye for now.
Bye.